Kentucky basketball has really needed to hit the reset button, and what better way to kick off a new season with a new head coach than with an all-new Big Blue Madness.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be previewing Big Blue Madness. Going to talk about some of the events that could be occurring, maybe a special guest that may or may not be there. Also on today's show, going to be breaking down Kentucky versus Vanderbilt. Suddenly, this is a huge game for Mark Stoops and the Cats. And then to wrap up the show, we've got some awesome news about four-star guard Acaden Lewis, who's going to be visiting actually during Big Blue Madness. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. And if you are watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to the show. And if you are listening on podcast, I would also appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. So let's go ahead and get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, what better way to kick off a brand new 2024-25 season with a new head coach, a new roster, a new staff, a new everything, than with a Big Blue Madness that's got some special things going on. According to Kentucky Athletics, they will be using, for this year's edition of Big Blue Madness, a court, according to them, designed by ASB glass floor for the center stage. The court is a full LED video sports floor that allows for interactive applications. This will mark the first college basketball event to feature this floor, which is designed to enhance player performance and provide fans with a more immersive experience. They provided a video over on UK Athletics, over on their social media, at UK Athletics on Twitter. This was posted probably, 2 weeks ago. Super excited about this. This was used at an NBA All-Star event. This was used at the FIBA U19 World Cup, and it's going to be used here. They put it together just a few days ago. It was used for the FIBA U19 Women's Basketball World Cup, to be specific. And Kenny Brooks and Mark Pope were quoted in press releases talking about how awesome this is. Kenny Brooks said, quote, "We look forward to putting on a show for Big Blue Nation at our first Big Blue Madness with the ASB Glass Floor as part of the spectacle. Big Blue Madness is famous throughout the college basketball world, and since we saw the ASB Glass Floor at the U19 World Cup last year, we've been intrigued by the possibilities playing on this court. We're excited to add this exciting technology to what promises to be an entertaining night at Rupp Arena. This will be occurring tonight at 7 p.m. By the way, for those that don't know, it's going to be broadcast on SEC Network. If you can't get to the event, I'm going to be watching it on SEC Network again at 7 p.m. Mark Pope said, "This is something that's never been seen in college basketball before. Big Blue Madness is one of the great spectacles in all of sports. We are so excited for Kentucky basketball to be the first college program to partner with ASB Glass Floor, bringing this exciting technology to Big Blue Nation. Our team can't wait to put on a show on October 11th in Rupp Arena." And if you go and watch the video, it's really, really cool how the floor is able to light up, show different things outside of the three-point lines and stuff. Instead of getting your traditional, what looks like a wooden court you can have here for Kentucky, they have the logo in the middle of the court. Just trying to describe it as best I can for those of you listening on podcast, watching on YouTube. It is actually a neon blue court on the outside. It's bordered by this neon blue light-up border. It's got neon blue for the three-point line. The free throw, the painted area and the free throw line is neon blue as well, and then everything else is black. And then very faintly in the middle of the court, behind the Kentucky logo, you would typically see the state of Kentucky outline, and you could just faintly see it here in this black and blue court. This looks incredible. I mean, absolutely incredible, with the animations going around the three-point line, the animations coming into the different parts on the timeline and stuff like that. It looks phenomenal. And if I'm not mistaken, there's actually kind of a little bit of like a pixelated checkered pattern going on the blue border. And I don't think that's the bit rate on my laptop. That is just genuinely the animation that they've got going here. It looks so clean. I'm so excited about this. That is probably the biggest thing here. Is just the with it being in Rupp, with kind of a reset with this whole new roster. You're going to get to see some really, really cool stuff with this glass floor, and you're going to get to see, I think, some cool events on top of it. If you're going to do the dunk contest and the three-point contest like you've done in years past, obviously you've got a ton of different guys that you could pick to win this thing. For the three-point contest specifically, honestly for the dunk contest as well. Robinson, Amari Williams, Brandon Garrison, those are all guys. Colin Chandler, I think, is a sneaky person to pick there to win a dunk contest. If they do it, my expectation is that they will, and my expectation is that they definitely do a 3-point contest. And I hope they don't limit it to just like 2 or 3 players. I hope they let the whole dang roster shoot. That would be probably the most entertaining thing that we could possibly get out of the entire night. And who you pick obviously could vary among people. Some may say Kobe Bryant, some may say Robinson because he's the lead guy. Some may say somebody like Kirk Carissa, somebody like Travis Perry, who has just apparently been lights out. I mean, there's so many different guys that could play well in the 3-point contest. So you've got that. You've got what's probably to be expected a scrimmage as they interview different people. This is going to be just a great spectacle for fans to kind of get to see and get to cheer on and appreciate these student athletes, because for this Kentucky men's roster, you're seeing a lot of new faces. And I want to just briefly shout this out here. The women's team only brings back two players from last year's roster. So you're getting a look at a lot of new faces, and you're going to cheer them on and support them. I love this. Kenny Brooks, by the way, has brought in a really, really solid roster led by Virginia Tech transfer Georgia Amore. I think that this women's team is going to be really, really good. My expectation is for them to make the tournament and for them to play well, play really, really well. They put together a roster full of really good scoring pieces. And Brooks is a great head coach. He's rebuilt Virginia Tech alongside a couple of different other programs, if I'm not mistaken. Kentucky, I think, is going to be really, really solid all around in basketball this year. So shout out the women's team. Give them the love and support. They're also going to be really fun to watch, I think, during the 3-point contest if they run one, which I expect them to as well. This is awesome. This is going to be a really, really fun time. But the big thing here, is a possible guest that could be appearing that we know is going to be in Lexington over the weekend. We'll talk about him in just a second. Before I do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Z-Biotics. Z-Biotics is a pre-alcohol probiotic drink. It's the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to help break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. How you use it? You drink pre-alcohol first. For best results, you can make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Then you can drink responsibly, pace yourself, hydrate, get a good night's sleep, and then you can enjoy tomorrow, waking up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. You can go to zbiotics.com/LockedOnCollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use code LockedOnCollege at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/LockedOnCollege and use the code LockedOnCollege at checkout for 15% off. That is all over at zbiotics.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. NFL fans, you can continue this really fun season with a big return over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's all over at FanDuel.com. Again, get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, continuing along here on the Friday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. I really appreciate you guys checking out the show today. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, I would greatly appreciate it if you did so. I want to remind you guys, we did an episode on this Wednesday. If you want to go and check out the Google form where you can predict every single game for Kentucky basketball this upcoming season. You can predict stat leaders, how far they'll go in the tournament, where they'll finish in the SEC. You can do that at the link in the description, whether you're listening on podcast or on YouTube. We went ahead and we had like 300 of you answer, and we went ahead and kind of broke down what you guys thought about the season. Some high expectations from you guys if you want to go check that episode out. I was on the video before this, the second most recent video on the channel, second most recent pod. It was before the SEC squad show that should be on your feeds right now. But this right here, Big Blue Madness. We've got the glass floor. We've got exciting dunk contest and three-point contest stuff. We've got an appreciation for both the men's and women's basketball teams that are going to be bringing in a lot of new faces thanks to the transfer portal, thanks to 2 new head coaches. This is going to be lit. I cannot wait to see who they bring out for this. But there's one man in particular that we have been speculating over for probably a couple weeks now is he going to be in Rupp for this event? And that is former Kentucky head coach Rick Pitino, who will be in attendance for the Kentucky versus Vanderbilt game. We'll preview that in just a second. But I want to know what you guys would think if Rick Pitino stepped out onto that court for Big Blue Madness. Would he be welcomed? Would it be a mix of emotions? My assumption is at this point, and this started all the way back kind of with Cal, where he was saying that the fan base needed to be more accepting of Rick Pitino, especially considering what he did for the program. And here you are now with Mark Pope coming in and showing how much he loves Rick Pitino. Coach Pitino on Twitter with a phenomenal endorsement about Mark Pope earlier this year whenever he was hired at Kentucky. There's a lot of love and a lot of care here between both the former coach, the current coach, with this former coach. My expectation is for the fan base to receive him with open arms. That's what I would do. I've harbored no hard feelings toward Rick Pitino online and hardly any offline, frankly. I think he's a great coach. I love kind of how he's approached things in his later years as a basketball coach. I think that what he did for Pope earlier this year was great. Pope has done nothing but talk about how incredible he is and how important he has been for his life. I think that getting Pitino out there would be just a phenomenal thing for Kentucky to celebrate. Some people may disagree. I don't think that's the large majority of how you currently feel, but if you do feel a way about it, sound off in the comments below. I would love to see Rick Pitino back for Big Blue Madness. There's a chance that he's here, especially considering the fact that he's going to be in Lexington over the weekend for Kentucky versus Vanderbilt, which we'll talk about here now. So, hey guys, in case you didn't see it, there was a big game in college football this past weekend. I don't know if you saw, it actually occurred within our conference. Vanderbilt beat Alabama. That happened, guys. That's a thing that occurred this weekend. When I was driving back from a college football game, I was in another state, and I was on the interstate. And I had this on, listening to it, and it still shocks me to this moment. I'm recording this currently on October 10th. It is like 8 in the morning on October 10th. This is almost a week after it happened, and I'm still in shock. The Vanderbilt Commodores, largely, they've been questioned as whether or not they should be in this conference. They have stunk for their entirety of their existence as a football program. And yet, against the number 1 Alabama Crimson Tide, who had just defeated Georgia in a thrilling all-time classic game, they come into Nashville, the Crimson Tide do, and they lose 40-35 at the hands of Diego Pavia and Clark Lee. Biggest win in Vanderbilt football history, and will probably stay that way for a very long time. One of 3 conference wins that Clark Lee has during his tenure as Vanderbilt head coach. Fun little fact to wrap that note up. This is the first time Vanderbilt has beaten Alabama since Jimmy Carter was in offense. I don't know if you've seen the photos resurfacing of Jimmy Carter. It's shameful for the family to kind of let him be seen in his current state, but that's another conversation for another day. This is insane, especially considering what Diego Pavia, Vanderbilt's starting quarterback, had to say on live air after giving thanks to God, swearing, and then immediately following it up by saying, we're focused on Kentucky. Kentucky's next. Hey, guess what? You, the Kentucky Wildcats, have the pleasure of being the team that Vanderbilt plays following the biggest game in their program's history. It may stay that way forever. You have the pleasure of getting their attention. Thank goodness this is in Lexington. Thank goodness. You have to win this game for a couple of reasons. Number one, transitive win over Alabama. I'll take that any day of the week. Second of all, this completely shuts down any sort of hype that Vanderbilt could possibly conjure for the rest of the season. And funny, I think that's funny on top of their misfortune if they just stink from here on out and they lose to Kentucky. It would also be really funny for Kentucky to be the one to shut that down, and then for all of us to be like, hey, wait a minute, Alabama, you lost to this team? You lost to this team? Are you kidding me? You have to win this game for those reasons. But also, if you want to make a bowl, if you want to continue to be competitive in the SEC this season, if you want to still have an outside shot at the college football playoff, which, by the way, the Wildcats still do, and I'll stand by that, you got to win this game. If you look at the injury report, it's surprising. Brock Vandergriff was listed as probable for this game. Didn't even know he was hurt. Here we are now against a shoddy offensive line. Can Kentucky maintain possession of the football against a Vanderbilt defense that's currently top 15 in the nation in turnover margin? They are first in the nation in turnovers lost. They got to hold on to the ball. They got to hope they don't give it up. And then they have to find ways to get Pavia off the field. Last week against Alabama, he completed 16 of his 20 pass attempts for 252 yards, 2 touchdowns, had 56 yards on the ground. He's been great. He was great at New Mexico State. He beat Auburn a season ago. He comes in, and all of a sudden, through a few games here, this is not a joke. This is not a bit. He's getting Heisman talk. Now, obviously, there's probably 3 or 4 players that would be above him. Ashton Jeanty, who would be my Heisman vote right now. Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, even Jalen Milroe for Alabama, who took a massive hit after losing to Vandy. But he's a good quarterback, like a really good quarterback, who is being aided by his former head coach, Jerry Kill, who's on staff. He's got a couple other former New Mexico State staffers there as well. He's got good receivers. He's just a gutsy, gamer-type player. And it's a defense like Kentucky's that can step up, I think, and make plays, but they have to get him off the field on third down. They were really, really good against Ole Miss in that department, but they have to get off the field on third down. You have to control the clock. Find ways to run the ball and establish things and slow it down. Give Vanderbilt take away as many opportunities for them to score as you possibly can. And then the other thing here, Maxwell Hairston's still out. So you've got to have J.Q. Hardaway. You've got to have DJ Waller playing really, really well. This is a huge contest for Kentucky moving forward. There's bragging rights. There's a transitive win. There is discussions as to whether or not Kentucky can make a legitimate push for the college football playoff, especially if Vanderbilt continues to play well after this, and their 2 slip-ups were to Georgia State and to Kentucky, and then you had a close loss on the road against Missouri. If they go 9-3, which would just be insane, that's a solid resume-boosting win. You got to win this game. You got to beat Florida. You got to beat Auburn. Kentucky's still in this thing. They're still in this thing, and they got a big win over Ole Miss to celebrate right now. But they got to lock in this weekend. All right, I want to wrap up the show talking a little bit about Kentucky on the recruiting trail. We got some big news there. Before we dive into that, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. because Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and will be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. You can sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For specific product disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. All right, wrapping up the Friday edition of Locked On Kentucky. We got a big one here to talk about. So Kentucky hosting a variety of players for Big Blue Madness, a variety of recruits, I should say. And the big one that we've been eyeing, who just announced a few days ago, he's going to be pulling up, and he's excited to see what's going on, is four-star point guard Acaden Lewis, who, in my mind, has been the most important player for Kentucky to get to kind of round out their backcourt and kind of solidify things for them to be like legitimate contenders next year, because he is that special. Aaron Gershon, we've had him on the show before. Staff writer over at 24/7 Sports, dropped a crystal ball on Wednesday at 3:30, predicting Acaden Lewis to commit to Kentucky. Now, it's only a 5 out of 10 confidence, but for Kentucky to have battled out North Carolina, Duke, and UConn, and to get him, I think that's pretty special. You can see there. This is. I'll go ahead and address this real quick. There have been just a couple, not a ton, but just a couple of people who online have kind of poked at Mark Pope, his ability to recruit, and they've continued to do so even after picking up 5 stars Jasper Johnson and Malachi Marino, saying, well, now shifting the goalpost, saying, well, anybody can recruit at Kentucky. It's whether or not he can actually develop them. This is a guy that if you pull him away from, again, want to reiterate here, UConn, back-to-back national champions, Duke, and North Carolina to get this kid. It doesn't matter what star rating it is, right? It doesn't matter if he was a 3-star and he was like a top 250 player. Okay, if that was his Final Four and those 3 schools wanted him and you got him over them, you should be jumping up and down for joy. This was the same thing I said about Adu Thiero. Forget the star rating. Watch this kid and see how he develops. And he has completely changed his game. And I think he's going to be good for Arkansas. Acaden Lewis is a bucket. Top 5 point guard. I think you could play him at the 2 if you really wanted to get funky with it. But he's a point guard. He's a leader. He can score. He can pass. He can do it he could score from any part of the floor. In the half court, I should say. But he is special. This is a special talent. Who cares if he's not a top 10 player? This is somebody that has a blue blood Final Four. It's a Final 3 technically, but it was a Final Four of UNC, Duke, UConn, in Kentucky. If you get him, we should be thrilled. There's not really a question about development here, in my mind, because he fits into what Mark Pope wants to do so well. Forget what people are saying online. This is a special talent. You pulled him away from special programs, and he's going to be a special player for your team. If you get him. If you don't, he's going to go somewhere, and I think he's going to succeed. This is a great potential pickup for Kentucky. I'm so excited that they got a crystal ball for him. 4-star point guard Acaden Lewis. We have raved about his talents on the show. He's not Rob Dillingham, but he's a bucket. He is a bucket. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. You can follow me on Twitter at @LanceDawe_. You can follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, you can leave those in the YouTube comments below. I'll see you all tomorrow or on Monday for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Have a great rest of your day, and God bless.